Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking into exactly how the market tracks the future of sustainable real estate. We hear a ton of buzzwords out there about green buildings and eco-friendly cities, but what does the actual data tell us? Let's unpack this using the SASB standards for engineering and construction services. It really all starts with this one fundamental question. How do we actually measure the green building revolution? I mean, in an era where literally every company wants to claim they're environmentally friendly, how do global investors objectively measure the shift without getting completely lost in corporate greenwashing? How do they know if an engineering firm is actually building the sustainable future, or if they're just talking about it? Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. We are covering 1. The built environment's impact, 2. The certification solution, 3. The metric that matters, 4. Active versus commissioned projects, and finally, 5. The green business case. Let's get going. Section 1. The built environment's impact. To really understand why tracking these trends is absolutely crucial, we have to look at the sheer physical footprint of the construction industry. According to the standard, buildings and major infrastructure projects are actually among the largest users of natural resources in the entire economy. Just think about the sheer volume of materials required to build something: the iron, the steel, cement, concrete, glass. And obviously, it doesn't just stop once the ribbon is cut. Once completed, during their everyday use, these buildings consume massive amounts of energy and water. This continuous sourcing and daily use contribute heavily to both direct and indirect greenhouse gas emissions, and they put real pressure on global and local resource constraints. Because of this massive footprint, client pressures and climate regulations are actively shaping the market. This isn't just about good intentions anymore, right? These are strict market realities. Governments and clients are actively demanding a sustainable built environment to mitigate these environmental impacts. And this creates a very unique challenge for engineering and construction firms, because they basically have to adapt to these demands or face some really serious market risks. Which brings us to Section 2, the certification solution. So, how do we standardize all of this? Well, the SASB framework relies on what they call a third-party multi-attribute sustainability standard, meaning we move completely past self-reporting. It requires an independent certification scheme that rigorously assesses a project's life cycle impacts and the overall sustainability of the building. In other words, it can't just be the builder standing there saying, "Hey, trust us, it's eco-friendly." And to qualify under the SASB framework, a standard can't just look at one single thing. It has to be multi-attribute. At an absolute minimum, it has to assess these 4 specific areas: energy efficiency, water conservation, material and resource efficiency, and indoor environmental quality. It essentially forces a holistic approach to building design. To give you some concrete, real-world examples, here are some of the prominent certifications explicitly mentioned in the source material. You might actually recognize LEED, developed by the U.S. Green Building Council, or BREEAM by BRE Global. There is also Green Globes and the ISI Envision rating system for infrastructure. These are the gold standards that global investors are looking for when they evaluate a company's sustainable projects. All right, Section 3, the metric that matters. If we zoom way into the exact corporate spreadsheet metric used to track this whole thing, we find IFN 410A.1. I know, it sounds a bit like a robot's license plate, but this is the specific alphanumeric SASB code that global investors use. This metric specifically counts the number of active and commissioned projects seeking certification from those third-party multi-attribute sustainability standards we literally just talked about, like LEED or BREEAM. By tracking this one specific code, analysts can instantly gauge how deeply an engineering firm is committed to the green building revolution. Now, what's really interesting here is exactly where this metric sits within the broader SASB reporting framework. Under the topic of life cycle impacts of buildings and infrastructure, there it is, IFEN 410A1 point. It sits right alongside discussions of how companies incorporate energy and water efficiency into their planning. And it proves that this isn't just some fringe data point. It is a central pillar of environmental disclosure for the entire sector. Section 4, active versus commissioned projects. This metric doesn't just lump everything into one big bucket. It actually divides projects into 2 highly vital categories. The source directly contrasts these for us. On one side, we have commissioned projects. These are buildings that are completely finished and deemed ready for service during the reporting period. The ribbon has been cut. But on the other side, we have active projects. These are projects actively under development, which includes everything still in the design and construction stages. So we are cleanly separating the finished buildings from the ones still on the drawing board. So the crucial point is why they separate these. It's all about tracking momentum. Commissioned projects are what we call a lagging indicator. They basically tell us what happened yesterday, the results of contracts signed years ago. But active projects, that is your leading indicator. Tracking the number of active projects seeking sustainable certification tells investors exactly what our cities are going to look like tomorrow, and critically, where a company's future revenue is coming from. Finally, Section 5, the green business case. Zooming back out from the raw data for a second, what are the real-world financial implications here? Well, according to the source material, providing sustainability-oriented design isn't just about good PR anymore. It is a vital business strategy. Firms that can actually deliver these certified projects create a massive competitive advantage in new project bids. It drives long-term revenue growth because client demand for economically advantageous sustainable projects is absolutely skyrocketing. It addresses those evolving stakeholder demands we mentioned earlier. And perhaps most importantly, failing to adapt to this metric, that carries the very real risk of losing long-term market share to competitors who do. And hey, if you have any doubts about how seriously the financial world takes this, the SASB standards are now officially under the stewardship of the International Sustainability Standards Board, or the ISSB, which is part of the IFRS Foundation. This basically means these sustainability metrics are being fully integrated into the global baseline of financial reporting. The global financial community treats these exact sustainability numbers with the exact same rigor as traditional financial accounting, which leaves us with this final, provocative thought to ponder today. Considering the massive financial weight of this trend, the rapidly shifting regulations, and the strict demands of global investors, if an engineering or construction firm isn't actively tracking and growing their performance under metric IFN 410A.1, are they already falling behind? It is a question every investor, and honestly every builder, needs to be asking themselves today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this helped decode the data driving our sustainable future.